Yo guys, what is going on? It is Invin here, and today I'm bringing you all an update video on the Summer Medleyfaire that has finally dropped here in New World, something we've all been very excited for. It does feel like quite a while since I last made a video, just a couple of weeks, but it seems to be, you know, there's not been much happening, and now all of a sudden we've got this full update with everything here, so I'm super excited to jump into it. Hope you're all doing well, so let's get started. Now obviously the first thing is the Medleyfaire itself. This is a fantastic event. I have played through some of these features, mostly here on the channel just to make initial thoughts videos and that kind of stuff, but I've saved a lot of it for actually coming into the event on the live servers as well. But the Summer Medleyfaire, from what I've gained so far, is essentially a little activity that you can do within the game in similar areas to where the Winter Convergence fairs were, or Winter Convergence Festival kind of places were. In a similar area to where they were, you will now find a Summer Fair. Within that Summer Fair, there will be a Maestro who gives you a very, very cool quest line where you go and talk to NPCs, you learn about the brand new trade skill and musical instruments being introduced into New World, as well as fishing, and obviously how you can catch these brand new fish, which again I won't spoil for anybody that hasn't yet done it, because that is very, very cool. All part of this event. Now, as you go through this quest line as well, as you talk to the NPCs, you will help certain ones out, and then you will see them actually at your Summer Medleyfaire, which is a very, very cool little feature, and actually is one of my favourite things that I've seen so far in New World. Definitely very cool. You can earn some really good rewards. Again, I've made videos on this previously on the channel. If you do want to check it out in a little bit more depth for certain things you're interested in, just have a look on the page. There's quite a lot of stuff, but generally speaking, this is a very, very fun event, and you can play it casually or you can play it hardcore if you want to sweat out all of the rewards as well, because they are pretty much all worth it. Now, like I briefly mentioned, we do see musical instruments coming to New World with this update, which is a huge, huge thing, something I'm super excited for, and again, it gives casual and more competitive or hardcore type players something to focus on. Obviously, it's a brand new soft trade skill where you can level up your music playing, and it's another like kind of progression type thing there, which is cool for a lot of players, but also it is actually a beneficial thing. It gives you buffs for certain aspects of the game. Again, here they give you a little brief overview of some of these. So decidedly dexterous, where it increases your gathering speed by 75% for up to 90 minutes, again depending on the potency of your song and how well you play it and things. So you actually have to play these songs by pressing keys on the keyboard, and if you mess it up, it's slightly less good, etc. And based off your level and how far up mastery you get and stuff, it's a very, very cool system. But essentially they each give different buffs. Again, this will be linked in the description if you guys want to check it out thoroughly for yourselves. But yeah, very, very cool implementation. 5 different instruments, which are the guitar, the mandolin, the upright bass, the drums, and the Azoth flute, all of which can be obtained through doing the initial quest line with the Summer Medleyfaire. You'll get introduced to this, and then you can start getting into the music stuff, so I would certainly recommend getting on that as soon as you can. Now, the next kind of massive blockbuster hit title thing they've got here is Barnacles and Blackpowder, which is their brand new Expedition. This bad boy is a lot of fun, a very, very cool theme. Other than the Amrine Temple, we haven't really had a Lost themed, kind of, at least in Endgame, we haven't had much Lost themed stuff. Maybe Siren Strand kind of counts and sort of that area, but overall in terms of expeditions, this is like the only Endgame one we've got, and it is very, very cool indeed. Lots of unique mechanics to it. Lots of the way that it progresses is slightly different to some of the other ones, with new kind of features in there, which again I'm not going to spoil for you in this video, but if you do want to see some more info on that, there is a video already up on the channel, and it is a lot of fun to play through. I really enjoyed this even on my first time when I was getting owned by some of the new bosses and their mechanics. It was still a lot of fun, so definitely jump in, definitely try this one out, and obviously that is paired with the brand new group finder, which we're going to move on to in a moment, which makes this even better. One thing to mention with this as well, you guys might or might not know already that tuning orbs have been removed from New World now, which means that we can freely do as many expeditions as you would like. Mutated ones, you are limited to 25 per week. Obviously, myself and a lot of other players who play this game regularly would probably like to see that increased. However, I think that's what they're sticking with, at least while we get this set up and going. In a week or two's time, that could be changed if needed, and they've said they are open to feedback. However, right now, that's kind of what we've got a baseline of, which is pretty good for most players. I think it's just more the hardcore players and the players who play a lot more hours per week that are going to want more than that. Generally speaking, that's going to cover most people, so we'll see how we get on with that. But just in case you weren't aware, that's how it's now working. And of course, they've increased least, new quality of life features have been introduced to alleviate some points of friction for our expedition explorers. They've done a lot of stuff to kind of improve these and make them better, as well as, like I mentioned there, the expedition group finder. So this will be a UI that you can go to from the map or from actually going to the entrance of the expeditions, and you can either set up or join a group through this. If you're setting one up, you can specify the level requirements, the gear score requirements, etc. So for example, if you're doing mutations, you can set a 625 requirement, so players under that level can't join, so they actually have to be the level, which makes this much simpler than getting people to item everything they've got and send it over to you. And yeah, it's just a lot less faff, which is fantastic. Really good for those still in the leveling process, you know, especially once you get up to that depth sort of level. And although there is solo alternatives now, this is still a really cool way to get people involved in it and potentially make some friends, which is exactly what MMOs are all about. Find some guildmates or find a company that you can join up with. It's all fantastic stuff, so I'm really, really excited for this, and I will have an in-depth video on that coming for you guys shortly on the channel. As well as this, it's worth noting that we have got 3 brand new Expedition Mutators. One which is Icebound, which is ice-themed, of course. One which is Oppressive, which is kind of different to the ones we've had so far, and that's where enemies gain powerful abilities like mana drains and zones of silence, which prevent ability usage for a short period of time once inside them. And then finally Frenzied, where this variant applies a curse to players that dodge. So curses stack up and deal damage over time, or dot effect, and when Frenzied reaches 3 stacks, it detonates. This explosion deals additional damage to players and leaves an elemental damage area of effect. Very, very cool. 2 of them there, other than the ice one. The ice one is obviously, you know, similar to the fire and the void ones we've seen so far. Frenzied and Oppressive, very different, and I'm actually really liking the sound of those. I think it's not going to be specifically targeted to one kind of element. It's just overall going to be harder, which I think is probably a good thing, and it's a nice challenge for most players. So seems to be playing well on the PTR from what I could tell as well. Now, like I said there, obviously you can see they have outlined what these expedition tuning orbs are. Like I said, 15 normal expedition runs per day or 105 per week per player, which is a ridiculous amount. 25 mutated, like I said, we'll see how that runs out. They've also done a loot rebalance so that you're generally going to be getting better and higher quality, so more rares, more epics, more legendaries from within inside the expeditions, that sort of stuff. But also you're going to be getting 50% of the coins from the expedition bosses have been moved over to other areas, so you can get drops from the elite chests and also closing corrupted breaches, and that is because you're no longer required to have a key in order to get in there. So it kind of makes sense to spread that out a little bit more, and it also rewards a little bit more of diversity in gameplay. So if you are trying to get your gold up, you're going to want to diversify your time just that little bit extra, whether it's one elite chest run or one breach closure run per day is going to get you that extra gold, which is pretty cool. Mutator loot shift as well. We've shifted the difficulty levels at which loot unlocks. So essentially now what you'll do is get a bit more of a sense of progression. The higher up the mutations you get, the more stuff you get unlocked, and the more things that you can actually get as drops from these mutations, which is of course what most of us are doing these for. So that is really cool. Again, I won't go into great depth on this because I've already covered it in previous videos, but it is a much more progressive system, and if you are someone that hasn't already got to 625 and hit those mutators going up through 1 through 10, this is probably a really good time to get in there and try it out if you've got a max level character waiting to go, or if you're almost at max level, get yourself up there, get your expertise up and jump into this, as it does seem like they've really, really improved that process. Now, as well as this, another huge thing, it's going to be instanced wars. This is something that a lot of long-term players have been really, really looking forward to, and again, it seems to be working well from what we can tell so far. We'll see how this progresses through, but this can only be a benefit, and hopefully we'll sort out all of the lag and desync issues that we were having. Although they were minimal, there was still a few. This should probably get rid of them altogether, or at least touch wood, fingers crossed, all that good stuff, that works. But great to see that added to the game. Loot, perks, and trade skills. So first of all, a huge perk rebalance. Again, I have made a video on this, but there's been over 150 perks reworked, adjusted, all that good stuff to make them better or to bring them up in line with some of the best ones, which is great. Skill-specific weapon perks are now more powerful, with some receiving substantial rework. Things like ability perks as well also work better when they're on weapons than armor, so you're going to have to choose your priorities and that sort of thing in terms of what perks you want on those weapons, as opposed to it being the armor gets all of the ability perks and the weapons go for pure damage. That might not longer be the case. Again, we'll have to see what the meta shifts to, but this is a really cool and interesting change that I think overall is really going to benefit the whole ecosystem of New World. Like I mentioned, they have improved loot quality, as well as bonus loot drops have been added, which is great. They've added a new perfect salvage system, so wherever players salvage items, they will now have a chance to perform a perfect salvage, which can be rewarded with research materials such as weapon scraps, and these can then be used to gain crafting trade skill experience. Special orbs that can be converted into gypsum cast to bypass the normal daily limit, so especially if you're in that gypsum leveling phase, this is huge. Materials to fabricate special items, and again, for those of you that aren't aware, we actually now have a materia item in the game where you get dropped from specific expeditions, and you can actually craft some of the rare drops there if you do want to. And it says other valuable resources down the bottom there. So we'll see what we actually get once we've got hands on with this a little bit more. But it does seem very good, again, from what I have minimally tested, albeit in the PTR. Now, we also see some trade skill changes. Again, I've covered this in depth. Generally, we're going to be seeing faster leveling across the board. Again, notes will be linked in the description, so if you want to check these out for yourselves, you can do. Overall, much cleaner, much nicer leveling experience for both gathering, refining, and indeed crafting as well. Even though we've just had the double XP weekends, if you're starting another character or if you didn't quite max everything, this is going to make generally everything just a little bit easier and a little bit more player friendly, which can always only be a good thing and will encourage people to keep going out and farming and crafting and refining to keep that kind of economy going, which is great. Now also, they've done some big world experience changes. Again, there's a ton of notes here, which I'm not going to go over in massive detail, but there's quite a lot of good stuff that have been added in that really just uplift the player's quality of life, really kind of make the game more completed, more polished, which is happening with every single patch. And I do think that this one is going to be a big slab in the progression statement to go, actually, we're at a really good point now with New World, which is fantastic. They've rewarded exploration and kind of really put a bit more emphasis on players being out and about in the open world, which is fantastic. Again, I won't go through all of these changes because I have covered them previously, but it is just stuff to help players and encourage players to be doing that. Expeditions, we've seen a ton of changes to, and like I said there, we have got the materia coming in there, which is the ability to craft certain drops, like for example the Lazarus bow. Once you've got enough materia to craft that, you can go ahead and make it yourself. So if you are unlucky with the drops, or there's certain drops you're trying to get that you haven't yet managed to get hands on with, this should help that to be a little bit more guaranteed after a certain amount of runs. It's not exactly cheap, but it is a consistent way at least to be able to get your hands on some of those better items, which is really nice. Now there's quite a lot of combat changes again with this patch, and again, it's not something I'm going to go over in great depth here today. I will go over these in a future video in a little bit more depth because they are very important. Couple of things that are really worth pointing out though, just as an overview thing. There has been some changes to attribute bonuses, namely that the reduced stamina damage increase from the 150 strength attribute bonus from 50 to 25%, so it's half as good as it was. Also limited the attribute bonus to only apply to light attacks rather than both light and heavy, so that is going to make a difference to some strength builds. Also, they've updated the 200 Constitution attribute bonus to also increase your elemental armor by 10%. It now increases physical and elemental, which again is actually a buff, so that makes Constitution 200 even more of a necessity for pretty much every single type of PvP, but also most PvE as well now, especially on the end game stuff there. And also, they've just updated the 250 Dexterity tooltip to indicate that this only triggers on random critical hits and not every single one, or whatever you want to say there. Now, another really important point here is the mana, stamina, and revive section, where they have removed the 1 second mana regeneration delay that triggers when mana is consumed. They've also updated it so stamina regeneration does not occur while jumping and is not stopped while rolling after landing from a jump. So some really big changes there that are worth knowing just as an overview point as well, because they are going to affect pretty much everybody's gameplay. Other than that, again, I will be making a video, like I said, going a bit more in depth on this, as there's quite a lot of important things to look at. As you will see, weapon updates there's an abundance of, which I've covered mostly, but again, just to clarify over all of those points, I will be doing an update video there. Again, perks, a huge one. I'm going to do another separate video on this too, because otherwise this one is going to end up being like 3 hours long. There's a ton of stuff here, huge update, really good stuff all around, but generally speaking, most things have been either increased in potency or increased in effectiveness, meaning that they're all pretty much viable options. There's no kind of dud perks. Things like durability, which were there, they've been changed. I think it's now called something like Reforged, and it means that this item doesn't take any durability damage, not just a reduced amount, which can give it some sort of sit place, and it's not exactly trash now, but it's still never going to be as good as something that gives you extra damage or extra defenses and stuff. However, it might be nice to have on some pieces, especially PvE sets maybe, who knows. But again, I will go more in depth into this in another subsequent video. Now again, something else which I'm going to have to do a follow-up for is the game mode updates. Generally speaking, all of these have had some issues fixed. As you'll see, majority of these are fixes or changes. Really importantly, with the Outpost Rush specifically, they have sped up the building time of buildables. Minimum build time is now 4 seconds across the board, with the exception of the Azoth contribution to the Corruption Portal, which remains at 10 seconds. This is important because you're probably going to see a little bit more of these being built, the cannons and such, so do be prepared for that, as well as they've increased the turret damage by a good percentage and increased the ballista damage by a good percentage. So they're certainly increasing the incentive to use these siege machines inside that instance, so do be aware of that. Many players might jump on it, and if you see in this video before most people, you probably want to jump on yourself and give this a go, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Arenas, again, the most notable thing here is that they've reworked the consumables, so instead of players granting the consumables each time they join the match, you actually keep the ones you already have or whatever's in your hotbar, and every time you use it, it uses it but doesn't actually take one from your stack. It just gives you an unlimited refresh of whatever you go in with. This is really good because it also means that they are not consumed on use, so you won't be using up your money and your resources, but on top of that, it will allow highly requested items like, of course, a split attribute food to be used inside the 3v3 arenas, which now means all builds are viable in 3v3s, which is fantastic. Wars, of course, we know that they're going to be instance, but one of the other things is that fort gates now upgrade outside of wars. I know a few of you have commented on previous videos of mine saying you've had issues with this. That shouldn't be a thing now, and also they've kind of changed the influence race stuff, so hopefully now that should actually work as intended. Companies can't just randomly declare and steal some wars. It should be the actual ones who have run it this time around only. So fingers crossed and touch wood and all that good stuff, like I said before, that this actually comes into fruition. But I've got a good feeling about this one. I think from the PTR testing they've done, this is the case, which is fantastic. Also changes to economy, progression and gear. All of this stuff, again, is going to generally improve player quality of life and experience in the game. Again, I've covered most of this in previous videos on the channel, so I'm not going to go in depth, other than to say that you're going to have a lot more fun and a lot less friction when you're doing all of the tasks that you were already doing around New World, which is always a massive bonus. And like I said, we referred to some of the trade skills and the perfect salvaging stuff just above before. One thing to note on the PvP track specifically is this point right here, that higher amounts of umbral shards are now offered from the PvP rewards track for the same salt price, so that is a little buff to us all, which I think is a very much welcomed change. And we now properly clear the PvP value of downed players on deaths to prevent occurrences of kill trading. So yeah, just be aware of that when you are trying to level up your PvP experience. As well as this, they have added something brand new called territory supplies. Players can now craft 4 different tiers of territory supplies, which provide the player with large amounts of territory standing in their current territory. Territory supplies will cost different tiers and volumes of corrupted fragments, stone and wood, depending on their tiers of supplies, and players can craft each tier of their territory items 8 times per week. This is essentially to supplement the economy in terms of what they were using to build the Expedition tuning orbs before. It's now going to be pumping those materials into these territory supplies. It would be really nice if we could potentially in the future get a way to reset our territory standing. However, with almost infinite levels going up, you know, it gets to quite a high point. I don't think it's actually infinite, but it is a few hundred you can get your hands on. This should be quite a nice place to get a lot of players up to max storage or a lot more storage naturally. And obviously other things like gathering speed increases and such, which can always be a positive thing. And again, it gives us something to use those materials that otherwise would have been redundant on something productive, which is great. Now, notable fixes, again, I'm not going to go through this video, but just to briefly scroll through so you guys can get an idea of the magnitude of changes we've seen, as well as quality of life improvements specifically on fishing, invites and notifications, audio updates, all of this good stuff. It's a lot of fantastic new content coming to the game, and I am super super excited. I've really been enjoying playing the game so far today. I've tried it out a few times since the update's been out, doing a few different things, you know, trying out Barnacles and Blackpowder, having a little look at the Summer Medleyfaire on the live servers, and it seems like they have generated a nice bustle on some of the servers, which is fantastic. So I'm going to be excited to jump into this again, and I'll bring you guys, like I said, some subsequent videos on some specifics from this, so that if you are interested in those, you'll be able to break them down a little bit with the videos. And I'll also bring you guys some guides and updates going forward on all of the brand new content. So make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already done so to stay updated with that. Other than that, that is going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments if you guys have tried out the update yet and what your initial thoughts and feelings on it are. And other than that, I will catch you all again very, very shortly on a brand new video. Thanks for your time, thanks for watching, take care, and peace.